Hi, welcome to Eryn Makes Designs, where today I'm going to show you how to make this adorable Santa Claus using just your 46 or 48 pin circular knitting machine. Let's get going. To make your little Santa, you are going to need a 46 or 48 pin circular knitting machine. This one here is the Addi Express Kingsize by Addi, but you can use any machine that you like. Some filling of your choice. This is an Eryn worsted weight yarn. You will need it obviously in black, white, and red, and whatever color you're going to use for the skin color. A lot of waste yarn. Some, if you're using them, safety eyes. These are 14mm. Straight pins, scissors, crochet hook, darning needle, and some stitch markers. However, you can use a safety pin, you can use a bobby pin, you can use even just a little bit of scrap yarn. You don't need to have stitch markers if you don't have them. And finally, don't want to forget again, a palm if you want to decorate the top of the hat, but you don't have to. Before we get started on the machine, I just want to show you what you're going to be making today and talk you through the colors so that those of you who are familiar with the machine, who know how to do a basic cast on and cast off, how to do color changes, and how to do a cast off using waste yarn, you can pause the video here to see all the row counts and get on with the work. Those of you who are unfamiliar with these techniques, I will be showing you how to do them on the machine. The body is made with a basic cast on. You begin by knitting 16 rows in your skin color for the head. Change to white, knit 2 rows. Change to red, knit 11 rows. Change back to white, knit 2 rows. Change to black, knit 20 rows. Then change to red and knit 13 rows, and then change back to your skin color. You'll see that in the portion of the body that is folded inside itself, I haven't bothered with putting in the white color changes. And so that makes 80 rows in total. For the hat, it is 40 rows. You will cast on in red, knit 11 rows, change to white, knit 17 rows, change back to red, and knit 12 rows. And for the beard, you are going to do a basic cast on in white, knit 15 rows, and do a waste yarn cast off. These are the row counts here, and if you don't need to see any of the work done on the machine, you can pause the video now, and you can join me when we begin with the construction of the body. So let's start by doing the body of the Santa. Now this is a very long tube of 80 rows. I am not going to show you the knitting of the entire tube. That would just take too much of your valuable time. So I'm going to show you today how to do the basic cast on, how to do the first color change, how to tie your color change tails, and then I will put up on the screen the rest of the row counts for the tube, and then we'll fast forward to the end where we will do the basic cast off. Right, to start, you're going to begin with your skin color, which is the head, and you are going to cast on and then knit 16 rows. When doing a basic cast on, remember to move your yarn in front of and behind each needle, alternating until you get back to the beginning. I'll meet you there. And now that we have cast on, I'm going to place my yarn into the yarn feeder and begin my first row. I always reset my counter after casting on. And we are going to knit 16 rows. I will see you once you have 16 rows knit. And now that we have done our first section, which is 16 rows in your skin color in your hat, in your head, we are then going to change now to do this white detailing, which goes all around Santa's neckline there, which is 2 rows in white. To do a color change, cut your working yarn, bring it out, and place it inside the machine. It is caught underneath the last pin. Take the yarn that you are changing to, this is white for the detail, place it through your yarn feeder and just put it right underneath the first pin, and then start knitting. So we're doing 2 rows in white. And now we're going to do another color change. Just as before, take your working yarn, place it inside the machine, making sure it's caught underneath that last pin. Take the color you're changing to, in this case we are changing to red, place it inside the yarn feeder and underneath the first pin. And we are now going to knit 11 rows in red, which will mean we will have 29 rows in total on our machine. And just before I finish the 11th row, I'm going to show you how I tie my color changes. So I start always with the top tails. So I have 2 different color changes here. So I'm going to start with this red and white one. And I pull the tails until what I'm pulling here, you can see when you start pulling them on yourself, is about equal in length to the ones that are around it. And then I just tie a double knot. I don't tie it too tightly because then that will start to bunch up the knitting that you can see when you're done. And then I cut my tails, but not too short. If you cut them too short, they will pop out through your work. I'll just finish these last tails off here. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to carry on knitting my tube. You can pause the video here with the row counts for the tube up on the screen. So we have 16 rows in the skin color, 2 in white, 11 in red. You will then do another color change back to white and knit 2 more in white, change to black and knit 20, change to red, knit 13, and then finally change back to the skin tone and knit 16 rows, which will be a total of 80 rows. I suggest you pause the video here with all of those row counts up on the screen, and I will see you back here when I am ready to do a basic cast off. And we did it. I always feel like I deserve some sort of reward for knitting that many rows. Cut yourself a generous tail, and we are going to do a quick basic cast off. It's really easy. Just put your yarn onto your darning needle. Bring your turn your handle to be able to bring your wheel almost all the way around again. Make sure you stop though before you get back to the beginning here, because it will pop your live stitches off. Just take your needle and you start picking up 1 stitch at a time. Once I have about 5 or 6 stitches off the machine, I will then start to pick up multiple stitches at once. I just want to get the tension loosened up a bit. So here I am. I'm now going to go through and start picking up. And then as soon as it starts to feel like it's pulling, I will pick those up. And you see I'm holding down the next stitch along to make sure it doesn't pop off the machine. And that's it. That's a basic cast off. I will meet you when you have your tube off your machine. And there's the last few stitches picked up, and we have the tube for our body knit. The tube for the hat is knitted in the exact same way as we did the body. There is a basic cast on. You will knit 11 rows in red, change to white, knit 17 rows, change back to red, and knit 12 rows for a total of 40 rows. I'm not going to do this on the machine because we just did this exact same technique when making the body, but these are the row counts, and you can pause the video here and join me again once you have your tube made and you are ready to move on to doing the beard. The beard is very easy to knit. It is just a basic cast on and then a waste yarn cast off. And I'm going to do that with you now, for those of you who might not be familiar with using waste yarn on your machine. So you will do just a regular basic cast on. Remember to take your yarn in front and behind each pin. I will meet you around here once you have your white cast on. Now, remember to reset your counter after you've cast on, and we are going to knit a total of 15 rows in our white. Now that we have 15 rows knit for our beard, we are going to do a change over to our waste yarn. I want to use this tail for sewing, so I'm going to make sure I have a generous amount. And when swapping to waste yarn, we do it exactly the same way as we do when we're doing a color change. Put your working yarn inside the machine and change to your waste yarn. The only difference is we will not tie these tails together. Keep them untied. All right. Some people like to knit 5 rows of waste yarn. I'm just going to use up that lot of waste yarn that I have. You do however many rows that you like. You just want to be able to give yourself enough space so that you can see each of your live stitches. I will see you once you have all of your waste yarn onto the machine. Now, I've knit my waste yarn. There's about this much left, but I am not interested in seeing if I can get all the way around again. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to throw that into the inside of the machine. And now to cast off with waste yarn, it's really easy. We just turn our handle until the stitches fall off the machine. And there we go. That's how we cast off with waste yarn. And now I'm going to go on to show you how to seal this end very neatly with a slip stitch and how to easily remove that waste yarn. The first thing we're going to construct with our Santa will be the beard, and I am going to show you how to very easily use a slip stitch and your crochet hook to close these stitches and create a nice seal. Now, please don't be intimidated by the crochet hook. This is just a tool. You don't need to know how to crochet in order to do this. I didn't know how to crochet when I first started using the circular knitting machine, so please don't worry. I'm going to show you how to use it now. Now, this is where we're going to use our stitch markers. I want you to find your cast off tail of your white, and you'll see when we pull that, it starts to move this stitch here. So I'm going to take my first stitch marker and pick that up. And then I'm just going to move to the next stitch that's beside it and pick that up with my next stitch marker. And then I'm going to pick up the stitch beside that one. And I pick up these stitches because when we start to close our tube, the working yarn will become quite tight, and by the time we get to this end, we can quite often lose these stitches. And for those of you who have worked with waste yarn before, you'll know what I'm talking about. This tube is 46 stitches around, and so I'm going to count halfway, which will be 23. If you are using the 48 pin machine, you are going to count 24. Once I've gotten down here and have come around halfway, I'm going to mark that stitch with a stitch marker. 23. And again, if you have a 48 pin machine, you are going to count 24. I'm marking that with a stitch marker just so I know where to begin. And here we go. Let's get closing. So to begin with, I'm going to take my crochet hook. I'm going to come up and through that stitch that we marked. And then I like to go up to the top. I'm going to come underneath that stitch next to it, grab it with the hook and pull it under the stitch I just had on. And then I'm going to come to the stitch that's down below. I'm going to come into it, grab it, and pull it under and through, which is what I should have said before, through the stitch which is on the hook. I will come back up to the one on the top, pick it up, and pull it through the stitch that's on the hook. Over here, pick this one up and pull it through. And I'm going to make my way all the way along until I get to the end, picking up and alternating between the top and bottom row. Right, I'm sure you can see exactly what you need to do now. I will see you when I get to the other end. And I'm all the way back now to the other end, and you can see why I put my stitch markers in, because those stitches are starting to pull a bit tight, and I can see exactly where they are. And then I won't miss any of them. Now, just at this very last one, I will pull it through, and then I will grab my tail and pull that through as well. And then we can go ahead and just take these stitch markers off. And then, because we did a cast off with our waste yarn, just grab that tail and pull all those stitches through, and then you'll be able to keep this waste yarn to use another time. Now, I know that a lot of people have problems with taking the cast on waste yarn off. And I have a really great, very simple, quick tutorial that I will link here. And if you are interested in learning how to how to take off easily your cast on waste yarn, you can watch that video. I will also link it down in the description. Any video that I mentioned today, I will also have linked in the description. And there we have the beard. And now we're going to begin constructing the body of our Santa. It's very easy. It's done just like a hat. But before we do that, I want to remind those of you who may not have tied off your color changes on the machine. If you haven't done that already, turn your work inside out, tie all of your color changes, and then come back and join us. Right, very easy, just like making a hat. This is the bottom part that is going to be turned up inside the machine. And so I'm going to bring, inside our tube, not our machine. So I'm going to bring its tail through and pull it out the other side and give that really tight pull upwards so that it comes up to meet the top up here. And I'm going to pull that tail really nice and tight. And I just want to make sure that everything down here lines up nicely. Okay, now I want to close this end. Some of you will be quite familiar with this, that when we go to pull this tail, we're going to get not a tight closure. For those of you who've seen my videos, you know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go around a second time. For those of you who are new to this, we are going to make it so that this top closes tightly. And the first thing we're going to do is we are going to pick up our working yarn and we are going to go all the way around these live stitches one more time. But instead of picking up every single stitch, we're going to pick up every other one. So I'll pick up the first one, skip the next, pick up the one after that, skip the next one, pick up the one after that, skip this one, pick up the one after that, and so on. So you make your way around now, picking up every other stitch, and I will see you when you are all the way around. And there I have picked up every other stitch, and I'm just going to pull that, and you'll see how that pulls in and makes a really tight closure around that opening. And then all we're going to do is take the tail from the inside section and tie a knot with this tail that we're just working with there on the outside. Make a secure knot. And then we're just going to bring our tails through to the inside of the work to hide them. And that's it. That's the construction well, the beginning of constructing the body. I'm just going to come right through the middle and firmly pull until you can feel the knot come through there. And just like I said before, don't cut these tails too short or else they might pop through your work. And I'm going to put these aside for sewing later on. And now that we have that constructed, I want you to do the exact same with your hat so that you have a little Santa hat like this. And now it's time to place the eyes. Those of you who've seen lots of my videos will know I always forget the eyes, but this time I did not. I'm getting better. So you want to make sure that all of your knitting is pulled down and in the correct place, because once you get the eyes on, they are going to hold the knitting in place. So I'm turning it over and I can see where my color jog is. This is really helpful because that helps me to know where the middle of my work is. I'll turn this over and I want to be working up here on the head. Obviously we're doing eyes, and I want to find what looks like my middle column of stitches, and this looks like it is that to me, and I'm going to put in a pin just so I can see and make sure that everything is proportional on my Santa. Now what we're going to do is we are going to count over from the center row 2 columns. So 1, 2. This is a column I'm going to be placing my eye into, and I'm going to count up 7 stitches. So from the white, starting on the head, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that is where I'm going to place my first eye. Let's have a look at that. Looking good. I'm just going to pause there for a second. And now I'm going to do the same on the other side. I will count over 2 columns, 1, 2, and count up 7 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this should ensure that my eyes are in the same spot on either side of my face, meaning they're in the same row. Sometimes I can overcomplicate things. Looks good. And then I'm just going to go over to the back, make sure that the safety eyes have come through, and put my backings on. Now, I know for sure that my Santa isn't going to be given to a young child, and so I'm not concerned about using safety eyes, but of course, you always have to judge where your work is going. Excellent. And we're on our way. When filling my work, I like to tease apart the polyfill to get rid of any bumps, and by doing this, I also feel that it bulks out the polyfill a bit. And I'm going to take it and place it really firmly tight down into the head, because what I'm trying to do is to get rid of some of these ridges. That, of course, is natural in the type of work we're using because we are not using any decreases in our knitting. We're just cinching it. So there is going to be that bunching at the top there. I'm going to leave you to fill your body. You want to make sure when you're filling 2 things. 1, you don't want to overfill so that your stitches become distorted. You can see here the stitches are starting to pull apart. I will be shifting this polyfill around so that I don't get that. So you don't want to overfill, but then also, to make things more complicated, you don't want to underfill. Because of course, if you don't put enough in, you are going to find that it'll look quite sloppy. So you go ahead and start filling your work and try and get a good balance. And I will see you when we are ready to shape the head. Don't close anything off. Just fill your work and then we'll move on to shaping the head. And now that I have all of my filling inside, for now, I am going to turn over my Santa, and I'm going to take one of those tails that I had kept from when we were constructing our body, and I'm going to turn over my Santa and look for where that color jog is. And I'm going to look for the first row of the knitting for the head, and I'm going to pick up the first leg there. And then I'm going to make my way around the entire head, picking up every other leg. So there's the first one. I'm going to skip this one, pick up the one after that, skip the next one, pick up the one after that, skip the next one, and make my way all the way around the head. You don't need to see me do this. I will see you once we have every other stitch on that first row of the head picked up. And there I have picked up every other leg, and I'm just going to come down because I want my tail to be right beside my starting tail. So I'm going to pick up the leg of the stitch where that tail is so that they can be right next to one another. And then I'm going to pull it in and tie it. So I'm going to cinch it. And I'm going to tie it in a bow because I'm not fully tying it off yet. What we're going to do is we're going to check back and we're going to see about how much filling is up here in our head. And he looks really squashed, really kind of alien. Anyway, I am going to, because this is a good thing about leaving our bottom open at this point, is I can press through more filling until I'm happy with how firm his head looks, making sure again that it's not overfilled, that my stitches are distorted. But it looks so much better. There we are. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to look to see if I am happy with the amount of filling that I have down here in the bottom. Remember, because we're going to be sealing this up in a moment, remember that we are going to be shaping our legs, and we are also going to be shaping our arms. If we have overfilled this, when we begin to start doing our shaping, then the stitches will get distorted. So I think for the moment, I'm going to leave the filling as it is and move on to the drawstring, after which I can then check to see if I am happy again with the amount of filling in there. Now, for your drawstring, you are going to use some of your black yarn, but for the purpose of this video, so that you can see what I'm doing, since black is near impossible to see in real life, let alone to watch it on a video screen, I'm going to use some white yarn. So I want you to pull yourself out a generous amount of the yarn, because not only are we going to be using this as our drawstring, we will be using it to shape our legs. Put it on your darning needle. Now don't worry about the amount of filling, because we are not closing this up just yet. We'll create our drawstring, and once we have that ready, we will then see if we are happy with the amount of filling that we have in there. What I want you to do is I'd like you to look around the edge of your opening here, and I want you to find each stitch. You can see it here, and the stitch has 2 legs. Pick up the first leg of that stitch, skip the next one, pick up the leg after that, skip the next one, pick up the leg after that. This is exactly what we did when we were shaping the head. Pick up the next leg, and you are going to alternate picking up every other leg as you make your way around that opening. So, as usual, you can see there now that I have the white yarn in place. You don't need to see me do this. When you get all the way around, don't close it off, because we are going to make sure that our opening is closed tightly, just like we did when shaping the body, when forming the body and the hat. We're going to go around a second time. So I'll see you when we're ready to go around the second time. And now that I have picked up every other leg of each stitch going around once, I'm going to go around again. And this time I'm going to pick up every other one of the legs that we picked up. So I'll pick up the first one, skip the next one, pick up the one after that, skip that one, pick up the next one, skip that one, and just carry on all the way around. And I will see you when we have those picked up. And there I've picked up every single one. And I'm now back right beside my starting tail. And you can see if we pull both at the same time, it will start to cinch this in nicely. Don't pull too tightly right now. Don't close it off. We're going to check to make sure we are happy with the amount of filling that we have in our body. Now, remember, we are going to be shaping our legs and our arms. So even though right now it might feel a little bit underfilled, once I've squeezed this in, and once I've squeezed the arms, the filling will be moved into position. And what we don't want is to have too much filling in here that when we start shaping our arms, that the stitches and our legs, that the stitches then become pulled and stretched. It doesn't look very good. I think I'm quite happy with that. You check yours and either add or remove the yarn that you need. And now that I'm happy with the amount of filling I have in there, I'm going to pull my tails tightly until my bottom cinches tightly closed. And I will tie those tails in a secure double knot, but do not cut them because we are going to use them for shaping our legs. Now, whenever tying a knot, you always have a piece that comes forward and a piece that goes backwards. I'm going to take this forward piece and put it onto my darning needle. But before I do that, what I want to make sure I've done is I've gone through and I have found my center column of stitches, because that's what I'm going to be working into. And here's the center column of stitches on my face, and I'm going to come down and it is right here. And this is where I'm going to be working my stitches for my legs into. So I just want to mark out this column. And I'm going to do the same on the back. It's much easier to see on the back because I just look to see where is my color jog, and it's right there. Don't worry about color jogs. We are working in the round, and so that means that you are going to have a jog in your work. That means, what does a jog mean? It means where your yarn changes to the next color. We're creating a spiral, so each row follows on from the other. So naturally, you're going to have this little bit of jog. Anyway, back to the front. I want you to take your tail that you've put on your needle, and we are going to work our way up, just doing a really light running stitch to shape our legs. So here is that column I'm working into, and I'm going to bring my needle up and in through the center of the first stitch I can get into, and I'm going to come over to the back and find that column of stitches and bring my needle out through the first stitch that I can find in that column. And then I'm going to come through again, move up a couple of stitches, 2 stitches, come back in, make sure that you are in that same column. This is how you keep your work neat, by working into the same column, and come up and out the next stitch on the front. And I'm going to make my way back and forth, going in and out the next couple of stitches along until I have come all the way up to 2 stitches above the white line, so 2 stitches into the red to form the legs of our Santa, because of course he's not just wearing a top, he's also wearing some bottoms. And as you go, I'm going to do it now that I've put a few stitches in, I'm going to start cinching my work. Don't leave it till the end, or else it's harder to pull. So I'm going to leave you, and I will see you back here when you have made your running stitch all the way up to form your legs. And when you are in your last stitch there, come back down to meet up with the tail at the bottom. Now, of course, you are going to be using black yarn, and so you won't have this white yarn that I have that you can see. So let's have a look. Before I tie anything off, always check to make sure you are happy with how it's looking. Just move the filling around a bit. Done a very neat job there on shaping our legs. Very good. Now I'll come down here, tie it off, and then hide my tails inside the body. Some of you might know that I have an email list where once a week or every 2 weeks, depends on how busy I've been, I will send you, pardon me, I will send you an email where I give you updates on my latest work. I send you links to the latest YouTube videos. If there are any PDFs, free printables that I've created to go along with the design, I send that to you as well. And also occasionally I will send you discounts for my paid patterns that I sell in my Etsy shop, Eryn Makes Designs, which you can find that link down in the description. But if you're interested in signing up to my email list, down there. That didn't work out very well, did it? Let's try that again. If I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, trying to flog my email list. Anyway, if that sounds good to you, you can find the link to my list down in the description. I promise you, I will not spam you. It's just a very simple little email because, hey, I don't have time to be doing and sending loads of emails. There we go. Now that we have our legs shaped, we are going to move on to shaping the arms. Now again, because this is such a dark yarn, instead of using the red, which you will be using, I am going to continue using the white to do the shaping of the arms, but you are going to use the red. before we do the shaping on the arms, we need to mark out our columns that we're going to work into. So I'm just going to eyeball here. I'm going to find what looks like the center column of stitches, and I will place my pin into that. And because I have created this using a 46 pin machine, I am going to count over 4 columns. But if you are using a 48 pin machine to keep your dimensions a good, gosh, the word perspective keeps coming into my mind, but that is not what I want to say. Anyway, so it looks proportional. That's the word I want. So that it's proportional for your size of machine. If you are using the 48 pin, you are going to count over 5 columns. And in case you forgot what I was saying, if you use the 46 pin, we are going to count over 4 columns. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I will mark that in. And again, 48 pin machines, you are counting over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. And place that in there. I think using pins in our work is so important. It just really leads to a neater finish than if we are just trying to guess our way through everything. And then I'm going to start over here at the back, and I'm going to bring my yarn in, and I'm going to come out. I don't want to be right down here because I'm shaping the arms. I want to come up 1, 2, 3 stitches from the bottom there. And I will bring my needle out through that stitch. And just like we did with shaping the legs, I'm going to come up. Instead of going coming up and in through 2 stitches up, I'm just going to come in and out of every stitch. So I'm going to go up to the next stitch above it, come through, come over here. I will count up the 3 stitches from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, and bring my needle out there. And I am going to work in and out through each stitch as I move my way up that column of stitches until I am 4 stitches down from the top. And that is where I will stop. Now I am painfully aware of how long these videos can be. And I've started to wonder if maybe I should be putting them out in parts. Part 1, part 2. I would really love your feedback on that. Just going to take these pins out. If you think, no, just keep it as one long video, I would love to know. Where am I? 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the last one on the front that I'm going into. Keep it as one long video, and then out at the back, 1, 2, 3. Oh, that was my final one back there. Doesn't matter. Keep it as one long video, or do you like the idea? Do you like watching having it broken up into different sections, part 1, part 2, part 3, like that? So one tutorial might be across 3 different videos. I would really value your opinion on that. So if you could just make a comment down there in the comments section. Sorry, I'm concerned about that. There we go. Okay. And there we have it. And then I will bring this tail out to meet up with my starting tail, which I will tie off and then hide within Santa's body. Now, of course, you're using red yarn. You don't have to be so concerned if, like I was, it didn't cinch up just as much as I wanted to hide one of those stitches. That's what was going on there. All the way up there. And I will cut that. And then I will leave you to get on. See, look at that. I will leave you to get on with the other side. And just to remind you what we did, we found our center column of stitches. For the 46 pin machine, we counted over 4 columns. Mark those off. For the 48 pin machine, we counted 5 columns. You are going to start stitching 3 stitches up from the bottom, going back and forth until you are 4 stitches down from the top, and then you will tie them off. So I will see you back here when you have both of your arms shaped. And there we have both of our arms and our legs shaped. Now, this is when I find that the work really starts to come alive. It's when we start working on the face embroidery. And what I really love about this Santa is all we have to do is a nose, because there's no need for a mouth. The beard is stitched down over the head, so you don't even see the mouth. I want you to find that center column of stitches that we started with. Bring your needle from the back or the side and come out just right where you would like your nose to be. I like my noses to be right close to my eyes. I think it looks very sweet that way. So I'm just going to come into the stitch that's just one below where the eyes are. And I haven't come into the stitch. I'm just on the other side of the stitch. Can you see that there? Good. And then all I'm going to do is wrap around and around and around that stitch. I want to make sure that as I am wrapping around, I'm not crossing over the yarn. So I'm not coming in and down like this so that it crosses over. I'm just going to be going side by side so that the yarn sits beside each other. And I don't want to pull too tightly because that will pull all of these stitches out of shape here. And I will carry on wrapping my yarn around that stitch, creating my nose until it's about as thick as I want it to be. And as I go, I'm going to be using my needle to puff up the nose a bit to help keep the stitches, the wrapping around consistent so that I don't have ones that are longer than the others. Or looser than the others, I think that's what I mean. And I think when I was creating this Santa, I went around 10 times. So I'll just keep going. You decide, though, how thick you'd like your nose to be. And I will see you back here when the nose is done. And there we are. I'm really happy with how that looks. So I'm just coming through that one last time. And I'm going to come out to meet up with my starting tail, tie it in a secure knot, and then hide it in the body. Look, now that yarn is wrapping over. So I'm just going to grab it and make sure it comes down neatly. There we go. And now I'm going to tie a secure knot. Now don't tie these too tightly because if you give it a really good pull, then you are going to distort your nose. Let's check. Good. And then hide those tails inside your head. And after this, we are going to move on to stitching on our beard. And again, make sure I try to hold on to the front here a bit so that I'm not pulling too hard, which will again distort the shape of the nose. Just have a check. Looks good. And cut those. Perfect. Now, before we begin sewing our beard to our head, we need to do something about this opening. But as I'm not filling this and it's going to be stitched to the head, I'm not too worried about it being closed and having a super tight closure like we have done on the rest of our work here. So all I'm going to do is put my tail back onto my needle, and I'm just going to going through those stitches at the top, just bring my needle through until I come out just over on the other side, and then I'll be able to give it a nice tight pull. There we go. And there, that's enough. And I don't need to worry about tying it off because I'm going to be using it in my sewing, and that should hold with what we've done there. And then what I want you to do is I want you to have a look. And in the case of our beard, we want to have some of this gathering. So I'm going to have to look at both of my sides and see where I like how the gathering looks. And I think that looks good there. And we are going to now pin it onto our Santa's head. And because I'm going to be using this for sewing, I actually want to I can see that I'm not over at this corner edge. So I want to bring that tail through so that I'm over all the way along that edge there. Okay, take that off the needle. The tails are all really long, but that's great because they are going to be helping us with our sewing. And I'm going to grab my pins again. These are just knitting blocking pins that I use. I like them because they're really nice and long. I did use just regular straight pins for a long time, They work great, but I do like these long ones. And the first thing I want to do is look at where the center is, and I just want to pin it, pulling out, making sure I've got that edge nice along that side and the edge nice along this side. Now, this is the only bit of real sewing I would consider, which is why I think this is a low sew project that we're going to do. And please do not be intimidated. I will take you through each step, and by the end you will feel really successful. So just pin that underneath the nose, and I'm going to come over here, and I want the corner to be pinned along with the center of my arm onto the head. Just pin that in place. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. Just pin it up there like that. So I'm going to pin it this way so that that pointy end doesn't get in my way when I'm sewing. There we go. Sorry about if you heard the dog barking there. That's my dog Luna. She's outside. So my husband's going to be letting her in. And there we are. Now, what we're going to be doing is we are going to start stitching on a diagonal up along the stitches here, and then straight across until we get to the nose, and then we're going to stitch around the bottom of the nose, come straight across, and then back on a diagonal down to the other side. This is really, really easy and nothing to feel intimidated about. When I am stitching on an angle like this, I'm going to come into the very bottom stitch where I've pinned myself here, and I'm going to come up, picking up the legs on a diagonal of the stitches next to it. Oh, pardon me. Look, I came in through the center of the stitch. I want to come beside it. There we go. Come up on a diagonal through the stitches like that. And then I'm going to come back down onto the beard and take that pin out now. And I have that edge, that column of stitches that I'm working into. And hopefully you can see with this white yarn, I'm going to pick up the bars of the first two stitches in that column. Do you see the bars there? We have the legs of the stitches, and then in between we have the bars. So I'm going to work in and pick up those two bars. And then I'm going to come back down onto the head. I'm going to go back in the stitch that I had come out, and I'm going to continue working diagonally upwards through the next two stitches. Pull that. Don't pull it tight yet, because it will start to fold your work in and it will be hard to see your bars and your stitches. I'm going to come down into the next two stitches. And you know what? I'm actually going to go into the next three, and I will pick up the bars between the legs of those three stitches. Pull that up, come back here, come back in where I was coming out of, pick up the next two stitches diagonally, come to that same column of stitches, pick up the bars between the next two or three, it's up to you, stitches, pull that out. Now I'm going to give it a little bit of a tug to get back, to pull that all in. And you can see as we pull it, we get this really lovely, straight, even seam. I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to come out diagonally again through the next two stitches there, until what's going to happen now is I'm going to work into the same column on the beard, and I'm going to come across in a straight line until I get to the edge of my nose. So, because I pulled it, everything started to pull over a bit. Now, there's my column, and I'm going to go into just two stitches here. Come back up onto the head, and I am coming now straight across. I'm not moving diagonally like I did along this edge. I am moving straight across. So I'm coming into the two stitches that are beside one another. Back into that same column on my beard. Pick up the bars there of those next two stitches. I can take the pin out now. Come back in. There we go. Now look, if it doesn't come right the first time you do this, please don't get upset. Just go ahead and unpick it and start again. The number of times I have to stop and start and retry, it's okay. It's totally normal. don't get upset. You'll get better the more that you do this. Now that we are here underneath our nose, I'm going to try and follow that column of stitches coming in, and I'm going to come out right at the center, the middle of the top of the beard here. Yes, can you see where I'm coming out? Between the stitches there. I could pull. Oh, don't pull it too tight like I just did, that you pull this all out of shape. And then I'm going to come in through around the stitch just underneath the nose, back in at that middle of the beard, top of the beard there, and come out the first stitch of the column on the other side. And then this is how we get our beard to tuck up nice and close around the bottom of our nose, like that. And then we're just going to work in the reverse, making sure we are sticking to the same column of stitches on this side, and we are going to work straight across until, where were we? We started to go straight when we were kind of just off to the side of the eye there. It looks like we were 2 columns to the side of the eye. So I'm going to do the same here. And I'm going to make sure that I'm working into the same row, which was just this row here, below the eyes there, so that my beard is growing evenly on Santa's face. I'm going to move this pin out of the way. I'll get you going, and then I will set you on your way. So I've come out here, and I am going to pick up then, because this is a column that comes up and along the edge of my beard from that corner, and I'll pick up the next stitches on the head. I'm going to work quite quickly now, come back onto my beard, pick up the next couple of stitches, and I'm going to check to see on this side, that looks good, and I'm going to start working diagonally down now. So on the other side, we work diagonally up, picking up our stitches, but this time I'm going to be working, now has it started to fold? I'm going to be working down to bring myself down to that shoulder seam. Okay, I will see you when you've got that side of your beard on and we're ready to tie off over here on this side. And now I am just doing my last few stitches, and I am not ashamed to say that I had to unpick that a bit on this side and start again, because I just was not happy with how it was looking. So if you had to do the same, don't worry. And we probably aren't the only two who had to pull that apart and make sure that they were happy with how that was looking. But am I bothered? No, I'm not. Now I am going to bring my tail over here to underneath the beard, like this, and I will bring this tail into the head and out to join up there. And as always, I'm just going to tie them in a knot, secure knot, and then hide them inside the body. And then we are going to move on to the not the final part, the second to last part of our Santa. We are going to move on to attaching the hat to the head. Now, some of you might like to keep your hat separate. I don't, because of course the hat's been made on quite a large machine. I'm not going to shape it to make it smaller. So if I leave it just loose on the head, it will be a bit floppy. But if I stitch it on, then it sits really nicely and it looks like it's made perfectly for Santa. Here I am racing on as usual and forgetting an important step. That's okay, because we can do it now. We need to add the duplicate stitch to Santa's sleeve. Duplicate stitch is an excellent way of adding detail once you have knitted your work. If I had wanted to put the sleeve detail here on the cuff while I was knitting the machine, we would have a stripe that went all the way across, just like we do as this little bit on top of the boots. But I don't want that. I want that just on the cuff. So we can use duplicate stitch now to do that. I'm going to come over to the back and I am going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches. And starting away from my work, I'm going to come up and come underneath that stitch. So here I am coming up through the 3rd stitch from the bottom, because it is the 4th stitch that I want to duplicate. And then I'm going to come up and through the legs of the stitch above it. So into the 5th stitch, I'm going to pick up both legs and come back down and into where I started. And now I'm going to come over to the stitch next to it. There we go. And it's called duplicating because we are just copying the stitch on top of itself. So I've started into the stitch that's under the one I want to duplicate, come up through the legs of the one above, back down, and back into where I started. And again, I'm going to come out the center of the stitch next to it, come up through the legs of the stitch above, and back in. Now don't pull too tightly. If you do, then you will get a really skinny stitch on top of the one you are duplicating. It won't look as nice. There we go again. There we are. Through the middle of that stitch there. And you can go back over and come up through your underneath each one and give them a little bit of a tug if they're starting to look a little bit loose, a little bit, yeah, loose. For some reason the word floppy was coming in there, but that wouldn't apply here. Just if your stitches are looking loose, you can give them a little bit of a tug to tidy them up. There we go. And I'm just going to have a look to see if I just do it this way. And I am quite happy with how far I've come over on the sleeve there. And I would love it if you make one of my designs and you share it on your socials. I would love it if you tagged me. On Instagram and TikTok, I'm Eryn Makes Designs, and on Facebook, still annoyingly, as Eryn_makes. And if you happen to be in one of the many Facebook groups that I'm in, you can find me as Eryn. Yeah, just put me as Eryn Makes Designs and hopefully I'll find you. Right, there we go. I'll just pull that through. Now careful, that will probably pull that duplicate stitch a little bit tight. So I'm just going to go back and have a look and loosen that up just a bit. So there you go. That is how you do the detail on Santa's sleeve. Now that you know how to do duplicate stitch, you can go ahead and work on the other sleeve, and I will see you when we are ready to sew Santa's hat onto his head. Right, now we are just on our final little bit of the make. Take your hat and find where the back is. I can see where my back is because of the jog. I'm just going to place that onto the head. And I'm going to show you here what I meant by, like, look, if you don't mind that and you want to keep your hat so that you can take it on and off, go for it. I don't like how that looks, so I'm going to stitch my hat down and I'm going to show you how to do that. It's really simple. It's not something in which you must feel as though needs to be done in the most perfect way. And I'm also going to attach my palm. I made myself one here. That was a nightmare. It was really hard to make, which is why you're not getting a tutorial, because I am not a palm expert. So you use whatever kind of palm you have for the top, or like I said before, you could just leave it without one. I think it looks just sweet without it. But I'm going to put my palm on at the end. I'm going to start at the front of my Santa because I want the hat to cover his eyes just a little bit. So I'm going to come up, starting at the front here, and I'm going to pick up a couple of stitches I've picked up 3 stitches there, just in that row above his eye. Leave myself a tail for tying off. And then I'm going to come up and I'm going to pick up just a few stitches on the inside of the brim. And then I'm going to come back and, sticking to that same row just above his eye, I'm going to pick up another 3. It doesn't matter how many you pick up. You can pick up 2. I'm picking up multiples because I'm going to go quite quickly around the hat. It doesn't matter, totally up to you. Because once we have these picked up and onto the head, so you can see how that will come down over his eyes, then we are going to pull the working yarn snugly, and then that will cinch his hat onto the head. So again, I'm working in a diagonal because the hat is going to be sitting at a diagonal across here. Okay, I think you can see what I'm doing. And I want his hat to sit right down low at the base of his neck there, like that. So you just keep going, picking up stitches along just the inside of the brim of the hat and picking up stitches on Santa until you get all the way back around to your starting tail, where we will then pull our working yarn snugly to make sure that the hat is attached to Santa, and then we will tie off and hide our tails. Okay, I will meet you once you have your hat stitched on. And here I am just getting the last few stitches on the hat. And I'm going to come down and meet up with that starting tail. And before I tie it off, I'm going to give the working yarn a pull, go around and tidy the hat up around the edges, and then I'm just going to tie these tails off. And as always, hide them inside the body. I'll bring it up down under the beard. Make sure that knot gets pulled through so that it is hidden. And there is your Santa, what he looks like without a palm. And then I will just quickly sew the palm onto the top, and you can see he will then look like this one here with a palm. So you can just buy yourself a pom-pom, glue it on. I didn't have any that were big enough. If I did, I would have just used that instead of making my own. I'm actually going to sew the pom straight into the Santa's head, not just the hat, but into the head. And that will give some stability to the top of the hat, and the weight of the palm won't just pull the top of the hat. Do what I always do. Nice secure knot. And then hide my tails. Now, of course, if you're somebody who decided not to sew your hat on, you would attach your palm before. Obviously. I feel like I'm stating the obvious there. Or maybe you're somebody who's going to not have a palm. Totally up to you. That's what I love about these projects. You can make them just suit you. And there we go. We have our Santa made on our 46 or 48 pin circular knitting machine. You might like to know that I have 2 other dolls in my Christmas Dolls series, my Gingerbread Man and my Nutcracker. You can find their patterns here in my Winter and Christmas playlist, where you can find other patterns as well. I hope you enjoyed that.